really random, but for some reason when I do this, I kind of feel safer. Can I go back one for a sec? There you go. When Carl initially asked me, Eddie, do you want to present at TEDx? In my Gen Y sort of naivety, I said, yeah, no worries, I can do a speech. But I never, ever, in my wildest dreams, would have thought that it would be this creative spiritual labor. And on Thursday, I was, going over my speech, and I had this massive anxiety attack, and I was like, I can't do this, I gotta pull out, can't do it. And then my friend said, Eddie, just go to sleep, let go. And then when I woke up, I tell you what, there was so much clarity, and I was just like, I know what I need to say. And I rang up a few of my friends, and I was just in tears going, And so the other thing that I realized too was that, I've done a lot of speeches over the years, but there was some force that would not let me talk BS. It was this force that said, Eddie, truth or nothing. And so I feel so honored to be able to speak something that means so much to me, but I just haven't had the kind of puzzle to put it together. And there's a lot of people in this room that I deeply love, and to be able to share with them as well is just, I feel so much gratitude. There we go. So I'll start at the beginning. I relate a lot to Alice, because sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in these two wonderlands. And there's the wonderland of the collective brain that's emerging, and there's the wonderland of this inner world. I sometimes call it the inner internet. It's really cheesy. Yeah. And this, my brain is kind of permanently attached to the internet. So I have this kind of weird, wacky awareness of all this amazing stuff that's going on in the world. Over the years, I have strangely, really organically interacted with entrepreneurs, philosophers, artists, and I often get this American Beauty plastic bag scene moment where I just feel so much awe that I just don't know what to do with it, And it really does my head in. And Paul Hawken talks about social entrepreneurship and what it represents. It's this global immune system that wants to heal itself. And I don't think it's just social entrepreneurship. I think it's just this movement of creativity that wants to grow, this TEDx. This didn't exist 5 years ago. Now you have all these people who are just passionate about creating awesome stuff. And so I'm trying to get my head around that world. And then there's this inner world, right? Over the last sort of few years, I don't know, I've been going a bit crazy. I've had to go through my fair share of stuff, which is life. And at some part of me knows that if I'm to truly serve the world to my fullest capacity, I know I need to heal myself. And so here I am, sort of smack bang in the middle, trying to make sense of this and kind of put it together, and then make sense of my, inner internet and trying to put that together. I think it was about 5 years ago, maybe it was 4, I can't remember. I was living in China, and I had this job as a preschool English teacher, and it was horrible. And so I decided to quit, and I got my backpack, and I went, okay, I'm going to go to Mongolia. And so I went off to Mongolia, and it was one of these experiences that still kind of sits with me. I remember I was with my host brother, and we went for this weekend road trip. And we used to stop off at all these nomadic herd camps. And it was so beautiful. You just go to one, give you a bit of vodka, and the romanticism just attracted me, the simplicity of living and the adventure and the adaptation to the land. And it really stayed with me. And I don't really know why, but it did. So fast forward to 2011, 2010, I sort of began in my head to sort of think about this archetype and use it as kind of this metaphor to help me make sense of the world. And what I realized is, holy crap, I am living this nomadic life. Like physically, over the last few years, both because of opportunity and necessity, I've had to travel around a lot. And then digitally, I somehow seem to like explore all these information seas, where 1 minute I'm talking to someone from, I don't know, Mexico about bartending on Skype. And then like I turn around over here and I'm talking like on patients like me with how do you manage bipolar. And so it's just like the beauty that comes with all this like divergent swimming is just amazing. One of the great things about 2011 is that if you can't articulate something, someone out in the world can. So this is John. John is a professor from the University of Minnesota, and he's like this hardcore education futurist. And one day, I was on YouTube, just sort of wasting time, and I found him on TEDx Laguna. I don't even know where that is. And he developed this whole body of knowledge about the nomadic society. But he used this really curious sort of tongue-in-cheek thing where instead of an N-O, he called it like K-N-O, like nomads. And he talked about this idea that what's emerging now is a new nomadic knowledge worker who can play with anybody, anytime, and anywhere. And when I heard that, I just got shivers down my spine. Finally, there was someone with some like cred who was like articulating this. And it was almost like this affirmation thing for me. It kind of gave me this really subtle strength to sort of step into the ambiguity. This is Wildcat. No one actually knows who he is. I think his Twitter handle is @Wildcat2050 or something. Apparently, according to Geek Folklore, he lives somewhere in Italy. But that's the extent of I know of him. So Mr. Wildcat, I found him in this blog community called Space Collective. And the best way to describe Space Collective, it's kind of like this futurist, philosophical circus on acid meets sort of secret society. Yeah? And anyway, I found one of he'd written this like 6-part piece, wait for it, on the rise of the cyber civilization. You know, being a geek, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. You know? And I dived into it. And like, he'd written this whole piece on the nomadic person. I've actually got it in my bag upstairs. Like, I kind of carry it around. And the way he writes it, it's kind of like this neo-Shakespearean thing. Like, I don't really even understand it, but sometimes I'll just look at it and go, what the hell was he talking about? But there was some sort of resonance. Like, I almost felt like I was this sort of Indiana Jones who just found this scroll, and I was sitting there going, what does this mean? But it's awesome, you know? Yeah. And one of the things that still sort of sticks with me, he says, the nomad has a freedom to be undefined. You know, that whole term undefined, we live in this world, right, where we need identity. You know, I'm a social media strategist, you know, like, you know, we need this like construct to make sense of the world. And I always feel like I was this alien, like in 2000, like I was living in 2045, trapped in 2011 in a 27-year-old who's in a body of an 18-year-old sort of thing. And anyway, what I was trying to say was like that whole notion that yes, it is okay to be undefined. Yes, I can be a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this. And like then the word freedom and like sort of connecting the two, because I realized like, you know, ultimately that was what I was searching for. Like, I just want to be free, you know? And I want to help others be free, whatever that means. Another cool thing that happened almost simultaneously is as I began to connect with this nomad idea within myself and finding like really smart people who were talking about it, I began to sort of see it in my digital nomadic journeys. And like from all different sort of spectrums and on different levels. And this is Carlson. Carlson I discovered via a guy I met in real life in Germany, a Swiss guy, and he's part of we're part of this entrepreneurial network. And he posted about Carlson's initiative on his blog. So, in my over-the-top curiosity and enthusiasm, I just like wrote him this massive email. You're awesome. Your vision is so cool, And anyway, we ended up having about 5 Skype calls talking about the most insane stuff. And there was 2 things about this interaction with him that really I loved. One was the frictionless learning. I think it was about on the 3rd Skype call. We were just in flow. And he was sharing Buckminster Fuller, and I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And then he was sending me PDFs of Greek philosophy, and I was just loving it. And it was amazing to me to realize you can find people now from your computer and find people who deeply resonate with you and then share and co-create knowledge together. Do you know how amazing that is? It amazes me how we're not blind, but it's the obvious and the beauty is right in front of us. It just does my head in. The other thing that I really liked was his vision. So Carlson is starting an innovation and creativity hub in Labos, Mexico. And essentially what he wants to do is at this hub, he wants a technology center, and he's in alpha mode right now. He wants a technology center, a medical facility, a yoga center, and the whole shmabang, right? This holistic awesomeness. And what I love about it as a nomad is that I think as our world becomes more chaotic and we can swim through 2 different topographies, the digital and the physical, there's almost going to be this need for the base camp. And this is a base camp where you come back to. You can rejuvenate yourself, you can learn, you can make sense of this complexity, and then you can go back into the world with groundedness. And I'm so looking forward to the day when we have base camps all around the world. This is just a small interaction that happened probably about a month ago. This is Brock and Fran. I don't really know how or where I met them. It's one of these things, you kind of just meet people, but you can't really remember exactly when it started. So Brock's from Oslo, and he's really interested in igniting innovation communities in Norway. And this is Fran. I think she's from the Netherlands. Anyway, we were talking, yada, yada, yada. Oh, Seinfeld. What was I going to say? We were talking, and I casually remarked, I think it was some Facebook forum, I said, hey guys, this is really weird. Do you think we're working, playing, learning, serving, or are we just procrastinating right now? And that existential crisis is still sort of intrigues me. Before I've even woken up and picked my nose, I can talk with people across time, space, and geography. And what do I do with that? I have no clue, And what I think it points to is I feel this sort of magnetic forces where we once separated things, work-life balance. I don't know what that means, these magnetic forces that we once separated things are coming together and fusing into one thing. And both these 2 resonated with that co-created insight that we came to. So this was the part where I was meant to sort of give a bit of a call to action. But then I thought about it and went, you know what? It's more of like a call to mystery, to like step into the unknown, because, I'm still exploring this myself. And I think one of the first call to mysteries is thinking about new structures, right? When I talk about new structures, I'm thinking about like the pillars. What are the pillars we need to make sense of all this, to like birth it, to like get the little sprout and make it into a tree? Sometimes I think about like, what is the evolutionary architecture that we need to start putting together? And I get a lot of these open sort of questions in my head, like, what does work look like now that more sort of this Gen Y and Gen Z is moving from less of a career, and as Kevin Kelly says, like a more of a project-based living? Or, I don't know, like what does learning look like now that like we're seeing so much disruption and we're moving from this like campfire learning style where you can just set up a campfire, bring them all in, let's learn together, see you later. What do services look like now that like we care more about access and really don't care about ownership, And like what really intrigues me is, what does the human look like now that the conditions are emerging today where it's no longer about like survival, because like we're seeing more people having their bottom of the Maslow sort of covered, and it becomes this more like post-survival where it's like a survival to express. A survival to find meaning and passion and express your awesomeness. So I use that term a lot. I think it's a brilliant phrase. The other thing, I think one of the calls to mystery, is this idea of mindfulness. A friend of mine, Ross, he organized this conference called Mindfulness in the Age of Technology. And he used this metaphor and he said, as the collective branches of our world become more intricate, to be able to bear that, we need the roots as well. We need the roots of the inner internet, so to speak. And I always think about that, like, what sort of inner technologies? How do I stay grounded amongst this? How do I take time off the computer? How do I understand myself so I can build and create out of this massive plastic bag of amazingness that's just birthing right now? And I think it's something that we all need to sort of think about as our world just keeps changing and adapting, and the world's, static is a myth. It's just, so the final sort of thing I kind of wanted to point out was it's very much an open road ahead, and the future is sort of very hard to predict, probably impossible, but you can kind of prepare for it. You can get your kind of donkey ready and all your equipment, and you can sort of go on the open road knowing that you're prepared. And I always sort of hold that, how can I get my donkey ready so I can step into the ambiguity, knowing that I can navigate each turn if they come. In saying that, though, what my deep, deep, deep spider sense tells me is that on top of the mountain, what we're seeing and what I believe this nomad truly represents is that we're seeing the rebirthing of the Renaissance person. I think the conditions that are emerging today are allowing us to play perpetually. As Albert Einstein says, play is the highest form of research. And if we can make sense of this, we have the potential to allow people to express their full creative aliveness. And if we are to change the world, we need to make sure that each one of us in this room, in this country and beyond, is fully alive. Because only then will the world come alive with it. Thank you.